Well, good morning. It's 6:45 a.m. It is 6 de Mayo, not Cinco de Mayo. I am headed to Glenmont. You guessed it, the Black Fork Gravel Grinder. Well, welcome back to VelOhio, and it is Saturday, May 20th, and this morning we are bathing the shark. I don't know how I got so muddy. Well, I know how I got muddy, just so much muddier than everyone else. Woo! Welcome back to VelOhio. Welcome to the 2023 edition of the Funk Bottoms Gravel Grinder. And every race has something different to offer. And I was like, I don't know, 100 miles in thinking, does it really need to be this hard? Good morning and welcome back to VelOhio. It is a beautiful August 5th morning and I am headed down to 33 to southeastern Ohio. I'm going to Millfield, right north of Athens. This is the fourth stop in the Ohio Gravel Race Series. It is the Athens Gravel Challenge. So, as an event, very impressed, really enjoyed it today. Race morning here, welcome to Irondale, Ohio, and we are just about to start the McLean Farm Adventure Race. Anybody have a clothespin? No, you're fine. Yeah. Welcome back to VelOhio, and I am in Magnolia, Ohio this morning. It is September 9th. It is the 6th of 7 stops on the Ohio Gravel Race Series, and excited today for the Magnolia Gravel Grinder. All right, Magnolia Gravel Galore in the books. 58 miles, 5,300 feet of climbing, 3 hours, 48 minutes, and most importantly, I kept the rubber pointing at the gravel. Okay, quick update, and I mean quick. October 14th, Wooster, Ohio. Ride on Jeremy's ride, 75 miles, 5,500 feet of climbing. All right, so back at Ride On, 57 miles of sloppy fun later, and just like that, the season's over. I really thank you guys for joining me on this adventure, and welcome back to VelOhio, and welcome to my Ohio Gravel Race Series 2023 recap. Today's special guest, we're joined by one of my 2 cats. I'm sure they'll be poking their heads in because they have absolutely no idea why I'm lying around in footy pajamas. I'll be the first to admit that I have been away for a minute. This is well past due for me to get this video out to you guys as far as recapping my experience of the 2023 Ohio Gravel Race Series. Obviously, I've been busy over the holidays with work, blah, blah, blah. I know you guys don't care about any of that. I just hope that you've had a nice off season, that your training is going well, and that you have some nice goals for the upcoming race season. I have some goals for myself. We can get into that later. But what I'd like to talk about now, my thoughts and impressions of the Gravel Race Series, get to some of the questions that you guys did have for me. Some of you reached out through YouTube, some of you reached out through email. So I want to get to those questions and try to answer them as best I can. Before we do any of that, I thought I would go over just some of the metrics from the 2023 race season. So if we look at the raw numbers, between the 7 races of the series this year, it was 465 miles of racing, which averages out to 66 miles per race. There was, let's see here, 49,500 feet of climbing for an average of 7,000 feet of climbing per race. and across all 7 races, so across those 465 miles, I averaged just over 13 miles per hour for the series. So drum roll please, out of the over 400 eligible racers, where did I actually finish? I did finish all 7 races, so that is one way to help your overall series standing. They did drop my weakest race of the series, which just so happened to be right on Jeremy's ride, but that's neither here nor there. So out of 400 eligible riders, I finished, drum roll, 10th place. Yay! Fireworks, confetti, balloons. I'm pretty happy with that. It seems like something that spans such a long time frame, you know, literally from May through October, and then you have attrition, rough conditions, poor weather, hot weather, cold weather, rain, and where you have a little bit of tech that can help fill the gaps too of, you know, maybe some of your shortcomings in your performance. I am pretty happy with 10th place. I have no illusions of being an elite athlete, so when I set out, I really didn't know what could happen, and I believe at some point I said I'll just be happy to finish. If I finish within the top 10, I'll be ecstatic. So pat myself on the back, little drink here. Let's go over some of the questions that you guys did have for me. Somebody asked me, what race was the hardest? It's difficult because they're all challenging in their own way, but I do feel that the full 200K plus of Funk Bottoms is the hardest race. It is so long. There is so much climbing. The course is not overwhelming, but it is still technical. You absolutely have to pick your lines on the climbs or you'll lose traction. There were plenty of people doing the 200K that could not actually climb every incline. And on the descents, I certainly came around a hairpin where, you know, Ford F-150 was rocketing up the other side and sort of had to pull off to the ditch. I mean, there were a lot of hairy moments in that race, and it's unsupported. They do have kind of that hidden aid station along the way, but I think that's just so that they don't have to bring out the broom wagon and start sweeping people up. So that, to me, is the toughest race. I know when I was giving my little post-race synopsis, I said that I had, you know, done some hill climbing in Sweden that helped me prepare for it. I did not go to Sweden. I went to Switzerland. I just couldn't recall the name of the country because I was that physically and mentally exhausted. Another question that I got was, how many training miles did you ride to prepare for the series? So I typically work off of the 80-20 polarized model, where 80% of your riding should be in that zone 2 aerobic base, 20% of it should be zone 4, harder than you want to work, lactate threshold style intensity. So for me, with my work and family commitments, I really don't feel like I actually did the best training plan for this style of an event, basically because I don't have enough hours in the day. I think the optimal training plan would still be 80-20, but you'd be putting in 15 to 20 miles, you'd be putting in 15 to 20 hours per week, a lot of zone 2, just so that you have that massive aerobic base to work from. I actually followed more of a 40K time trial plan that is meant to optimize your performance over the course of an hour. It's a training plan that I've used in the past 4 time trials. And in this circumstance, I just thought it was gonna really wring the most out of my body with the limited training that I have. So I would recommend that 80-20 training style, the polarized model, but I would recommend that you ride more than I rode this year, which was, you know, 5 days a week or so of 1-hour rides with that big ride on the weekend. Another question that was posed to me was, what is your advice strategy for climbing those steep grades like in Black Fork with very loose gravel and people getting off the bike in front of you? So this is something that I made a video about early in the season as far as optimizing my gear ratios. So I do ride with a 30-46 in the front, and with that wolf tooth, I was able to put an 11 through 40 on the rear. So that 30 front to a 40 rear gives you a well under 1-to-1 ratio for climbing. And if you have the gears, basically every road is flat, because what really gets you is being outside of your preferred cadence. If you have to grind along at 40 RPM, and you just hit a pebble that kind of ruins your rhythm, you'll be off the bike. But if you can kind of maintain, my preferred cadence might be 93 RPM or something like that. But with that 30 to 40, I could still hold, 80 RPM on these 18 to 20% gradients. So you're still churning your legs. Now that's just that's the mechanical side of things. Does it help to have proper technique? I mean, absolutely. So I often go down to the Griggs Reservoir where people do a lot of sledding. And that helped me with my weight distribution on the bike, because you really can't stand. You can't get up and just smash the pedals and try to go, Matthew Vanderpool up a cobbled climb, because you will break traction on your rear wheel. And it's so steep that keeping so much weight over your rear wheel will almost make you wheelie and kind of loop out. So you're sort of pressing yourself down into the saddle as you're pressing the handlebars down into the dirt as well, just to maintain traction. And of course, the last component of climbing a steep gradient is you have to be fit enough to actually get up, and that's where the training comes in. All right, let's see. Another question that was asked of me was, for the Ohio Gravel Series, what would be the best suggestions as gear ratio and tire size? So this is a hot topic, and it might not make as much of a difference as people make it out to be, but my personal preference and what I use this year is I use a 650B wheel or 27.5 wheel. It has a 25 millimeter internal rim width, and I use 2.1 inch Schwalbe Thunderbolts on that bike that have sort of a file tread in the middle with a larger, more pronounced shoulder lug. They measure up to be 53 to 54 millimeters. And why do I do that? Well, we can talk about speed, and I think we should, but there's no debate over the fact that a larger tire is going to give you better traction for climbing. So check, advantage to a larger tire. A larger tire is going to give you more flotation over well-packed gravel. So if you think about it, you're going to use a lot of energy digging a rut through gravel. If you can turn around and see the track that you just rode, it took a lot of energy to create that rut. Whereas if you can stay on top of hard-packed gravel, you're saving a lot of energy to do that. Braking traction will be improved. With these steep descents that you encounter every single race in this series, I will take more braking traction. And then of course, cornering traction. That's another advantage of a larger tire. Oh, hello. One other advantage of running a large mountain bike tire is that you can run lower pressure. There are a lot of benefits to lower pressure, but specifically what I'm speaking of is the puncture resistance of running lower pressure. Now, what does that mean? Well, I can have a decreased amount of casing tension with a larger tire using lower air pressure. And if I try to jam a sharp rock into that, it's not going to be as well enforced from pressure on the other side to actually poke through. So if I'm holding a rope kind of loosely and I try to slash it with a knife, it's going to give that little bit. Whereas if I pull that rope taut, I can just cut right through. So theoretically speaking, 38 millimeter tire, 45, 50 PSI on a not very rough course will still have a greater puncture resistance, even if it's rolling faster, just because you have to run that higher sidewall tension to the tire. I did not have a single puncture across all 7 races, and that is something that I would attribute to the mountain bike tire. Mountain bike tires of that size are very often cross-country race tires as well. So they are made with speed in mind. They do actually have pretty thin, flexible sidewalls. And my Thunderbolts weigh less than, let's say, a 47 millimeter Pathfinder Pro, because the Pathfinder Pro has to have that reinforced sidewall. There's so much information out there about rolling resistance when it comes to the actual interaction of the tire on the road. But one thing that I didn't talk about was there will be more wind resistance, aero resistance, when you do have that larger tire. And it's something like a half a watt per millimeter. So if I'm going with a 50 over a 40, yeah, I'm looking at around 5 watts of reduced efficiency there, of increased aero drag. That makes more of a difference the faster you go. So They often say you're not best to model your equipment choices after what the pros use. If you look at Wout van Aert in the UCI Gravel World Championships and he's using a 40, does that mean it's the best tire for me? Well, probably not, because he's going to be averaging 23, 25, 27 miles an hour, where that aero resistance is going to make a much bigger difference and cause a much greater penalty for a rider like Wout van Aert versus what it's going to cost me. As we saw, my average mile per hour was 13 miles an hour, and that's not terribly slow. I was certainly passing loads and loads of people, but the interaction with the surface that I was riding across made a much bigger difference to me than did the aero penalty of that wider tire. I did look up a quote from Ted King on the subject. Ted King, Unbound winner, who has won Unbound on 650B by 47 and 700 by 42. So he's a guy that knows something about tire size. My personal preference is to go take a gauge at what most people are doing and then use the next size up. I'm not going to rehash their findings, but the guys at Silca, who do not sell tires, Dylan Johnson, who is a professional gravel rider who does not sell tires and would ride a tricycle if he thought it was faster, and Rene Hurst, who make 650B and 700C tire sizes, have all done testing that show there's not much of a penalty when it comes to medium grade gravel riding up until you hit that 50 to 55, 2.1, 2.2 inch width. All right, more questions here. Tips or suggestions for racers doing the Ohio Gravel Race Series next year. Beyond what I've said already about equipment, my first suggestion would be for riders to join a cycling group, join the Ohio Gravel Grinders Facebook page, and go on a group ride. Talk to the riders, learn about being self-sufficient, learn about pacing, learn how to plug a tubeless tire, learn how to index your cassette if it's covered in mud and you're going up a hill and you can't change gear. I mean, there are so many little things that happen, and when you don't have that team car following behind you, you're going to have to be self-reliant. There are good Samaritans along the course. I had one of my own this year that gave me a little bit of chamois cream for my feet, but if you want to be at that pointy end of the spear, nobody's going to stop and help you plug your tire when you get a flat. Go out on the Ohio Gravel Grinders Facebook page routes. They've got them all mapped on their webpage. Get used to the fitness that you're going to need. Get comfortable with the descents and the speed that you're going to be carrying. It's a little late for it now, but I would recommend cyclocross racing because it brings all of the skills, the technical skills that you need for off-road riding, but you practice it at a much lower speed, so the consequences are diminished within cyclocross. I was asked as well, what are some tips or suggestions for race directors to improve their races? I am hard pressed to make lots of suggestions because I feel like to call the race organizers dedicated professionals is really insufficient, because in most cases, they're not dedicated professionals. They are dedicated amateurs who are doing something great because they believe in it, not because of the financial payout that's going to be at the other side for them. So I think that all the race organizers really deserve a great round of applause and deserve a lot of respect for what they've done, because without them, the hundreds of people that enter these races would not have a place to dispense with their madness. So one thing that I did, one thing that I thought of was, everybody wants to have fun, everybody wants to get a beer at the end, some people want to try to win the race, but what if we had King of the Mountain type segments, whether they're known or unknown? But I'm thinking about enduro racing, where a lot of the race is neutralized. It's just the downhill segments that count toward a standing. I was surprised how motivated I was by getting a hobo stove at the Funk Bottoms Gravel Grinder if you finish under 11 hours. Little things like that just, make it fun. You could win a jar of gravel if you just did this climb the fastest, and it'll be a Strava segment and everybody knows about it, and you could start it in first place or 50th place, but whoever does this stretch fastest, I think that kind of grinduro, if you will, I hope I didn't just coin that, King of the Mountain element could be fun. One thing that I liked about Magnolia was just the attention paid to safety within the course. Now, a lot of that is private property, so I believe that Magnolia had greater control over marking the course for particularly rough sections, and I don't think that's really feasible for all racers and all race organizers. I did appreciate that though, because we are weekend warriors. Most of us are going to work on Monday. So even if we had something along the lines of course notes. Now I know that Funk Bottoms does a really good job of laying out the entire course with pictures and course notes, and make sure you take a right here, versus a left here. And I think even just watch out at mile 17, because you're going to be going down a hill, and a week ago a tree fell across and everybody's going to have to scream onto their brakes, or there's going to be a massive pileup. Something like that would be well appreciated, I think, by everyone. And it doesn't tame the race, because I know this is supposed to be a little bit rough and tough. It's supposed to be a little bit risky. That's part of the appeal of gravel, that it makes the hair on your neck stand up. So I'm not looking to nerf the races, but anything that we can do to keep the intensity but increase the safety, I think would appreciate it. So course notes for particularly rough sections would be a good idea. The other thing that I thought of would be a team's division. Now, most people that are at the pointy end of the spear, at the front of the race, they're going to be drafting off each other. They're going to be using pack racing mechanics, and it comes down to, that war of attrition. We're all just going to attack each other until there's one man standing. It might be fun just to have, a minimum group of 3 team that takes themselves out of the solo standings, but just tries to complete a race as fast as they can, using actual team mechanics. So not trying to drop everyone, but taking fair turns and just seeing who can be the fastest team. That might get people into it that otherwise wouldn't want to get into it solo, coming in with your local cycling club and actually having a group of 4 or 5. I think something like that could be a fun addition as well. So let's get into a little bit of overrated and underrated for the series. For me personally, I tried some new tactics, tried some new equipment. What do I feel? Underrated, mountain bike tire width. We've already talked enough about that. Wide range gearing, underrated. We've already talked enough about that. Using a mountain bike as opposed to a gravel bike on the toughest of conditions. Wink, wink, McLean Farm. Yes, I had a crash. Maybe I was overconfident. Maybe it's just that rough anyway. But if I were to do that race again, I would use the same bike. I would go the 2.75 plus tires with aero bars. I have no regrets about my choices there. Maybe that's where that course note would have been helpful for me. But like I said, if I were to do that again, I would use a mountain bike again. Hydration pack. I used this on at least 4 of the 7, if not 5 of the 7 races. If I can pick up a minute by having the optimal tire, I'm going to pick up 5 minutes by never stopping at an aid station. So I would, between my 2 bottles and the hydration pack, I didn't stop at one aid station throughout the course of the race series this year. Also underrated, documenting my experience this year and sharing it with you all and getting, overwhelmingly positive feedback from everyone. You really motivated me to do my best in the races, but to also capture the race in the highest quality that I could. You could argue that I lost a couple minutes on the race series because I was too busy talking into the camera. But when I wasn't on camera, I was working very hard for myself, but also for you guys, because I wanted a quality product that, honestly, that I'm surprised anyone would want to watch. So thank you all. Also underrated, and this gets back to the aero penalty of using a 10 millimeter wider tire, aero bars. I know they're contentious. Not everyone's a fan of using aero bars when group riding is involved. I can guarantee you that I was never tucked in behind somebody on my aero bars, but yeah, if my tire is 10 millimeters wider, but my shoulders and my back are 10 centimeters narrower and lower because I'm on the aero bars, I made up significant amounts of time in this race series through the use of aero bars. Now, I did come from a triathlon background, so over 10 years of racing on aero bars, and then you make it that much trickier, the fact that you're on gravel, which is somewhat mitigated by having the 2.1-inch tire. Not everyone's going to be comfortable with aero bars, but they really helped me with this year. I would never not consider using them if they're allowed and if I'm going for a place. Even more than just going faster for the same wattage, if I lost somebody, if I lost a group, let's say on a climb, I'm carrying 2 giant bottles of hydration pack and bigger mountain bike tires. Let's say they distance me on the ascent. Coming down the descent, if there is a flat section, I was able to rejoin the group several times throughout the course of this year because of the aero bars, and I didn't have to go into the red to catch them. I would just sit down on the aero bars, come back up into the group, and then benefit from the draft that they were providing. Let's get into overrated. The Lauf fork. Maybe somebody's had a good experience out there, and probably a lot of it just comes down to having a bike that is designed with the axle to crown measurements, etc., etc. I bet that Lauf True Grit bicycle as one package, as an entire unit, probably works pretty well. And I know that they say 650B is allowed, but really it's designed around 700. So maybe there are several things that I was doing wrong, but the lateral stiffness, I just was not a fan of that fork. When I would turn, my wider tire would try to stay upright until it would just fall over. So it wouldn't turn until it would just collapse. This, the worst feeling of like sudden wheel flop. So it was very unnerving, and I would never use it again with my Van Dessel ADD. Potentially overrated as well. Aero socks and shaving my legs. Aero socks have been shown to give you, a 4-watt benefit at 40 kilometers per hour. So at my 13 miles an hour, were they really making a difference? I don't know, probably not. Looking down, seeing shaven legs with aero socks, it did just kind of remind me that I was in a race, and if I'm going to look this silly, I better be fast. So there is that, but probably overrated. And then probably just rated, just well rated, not over or under, the wax chain from Silka. It did do an excellent job of maintaining a clean chain throughout the course of the race. There is no perfect lubrication wax system besides a fully enclosed, rear hub with a belt drive or something like that, at least to now. But one of the things that they say is that it's supposed to prolong the life of your chain and components. And when this series was over, my chain was elongated past what is recommended. So it didn't actually protect my equipment very well, but I do feel like it kept it cleaner longer, and it was never that really noisily squeaky during the races. So also well rated, I would say that Works angled headset that I used. Are we running? Yes, we're running. Okay. The Works angled headset that I used to slacken my head tube angle by 1.5 degrees, giving me, I think it was 8 millimeters more trail. It's hard to notice, right? You're going to adapt to the bike that you're on. You're going to make use of your equipment the best that you can. But it felt pretty good. And I know in years past, it's at least been in my head that I'm basically on a cyclocross bike. So if I can do anything to get that front tire out in front of me, I think it would be helpful. With that being said, I did race a cyclocross race with that slacker head tube angle this year. And did I notice my bike was any less responsive? Not really. The only thing I really noticed is that I didn't have toe overlap anymore. So it actually made a difference, and it's at least not any worse. And if all it did was alleviate the toe overlap, I suppose it's worth it. And then just well rated, I did actually end up wearing gloves for many of the courses this year. You could argue that the gloves came in handy as I careened down a 45% grade rock wall. But just to take the buzz out of my hands, I think that was pretty helpful. And then I would say the suspension stem from Redshift, you basically don't notice it in a good way. So it's not intrusive, you don't feel it bob all over the place. But when I went back to my road bike, that is, you know, completely different, but riding on pavement, you do notice there's a little bit more kick out of a quick pothole or something like that. So I would see almost no downside to the suspension stem, and I'm willing to buy into the theoretical advantages of reducing rider fatigue through, you know, all those high frequency vibrations and then taking away some of the big hits that you get. And those big hits don't have to be huge potholes, but when you're descending at 40 miles an hour and you do hit a little rut, and you've got 100 more miles to go in a race that's unsupported, I do think it comes in handy. So this is going to be a little bit like youth soccer. Everybody gets an award. So I want to go through all the races and just tell you guys what to look for when you enter all these excellent high quality races. So if you want to feel like you're a professional in a large field comprised of riders from many states, a mass start with numerous vendors, challenging and diverse conditions, an excellent course marking, I would recommend you check out the Black Fork Gravel Grinder. If you want a race that kind of feels, I don't know, smaller in scale, more kind of speakeasy, grassroots vibes, but plenty of distance and elevation, still a challenging course, and good potential for poor conditions, I would recommend checking out Baiting the Shark. Here's a good one. If you've been dreaming of something epic and life-affirming, if you've been drawn to the scale of Unbound 200 with endless gravel roads, self-supported, long, lonely stretches, challenging your every physical and mental fiber, which is, you know, basically it's more or less the Gravel World Championships, UCI, but you feel that would just be too damn easy and you'd rather prefer to drive to the race that morning instead of flying and staying in a crappy Airbnb, please check out Funk Bottoms Gravel. Because it is more challenging, and I have it on good affirmation from many of the people that have done both, telling me that the 200K Funk Bottoms is indeed more difficult than the Unbound 200. If you'd prefer to show those shaven leg roadies who's the boss on the longest consecutive stretches of the most well-maintained mountain bike single track in the series, then the Athens Gravel Grinder is for you. You can ride a gravel bike, you can ride your mountain bike. There's no real significant advantage, but if you are good on those mountain bike sections, you can make up a lot of time. I think the last 7 miles of that race was all on single track, and it's down at the Bailey system, which has dozens of miles in the first place, but it's all mechanically cut, well groomed, and it is a pleasure to ride. Let's see here. If you want to cross the finish line and drop to your knees, to kiss the ground that you kneel upon, staring up at the sky to thank Apollo that you've returned to your car in one piece, even if those pieces are no longer fully connected to each other, you will find what you were looking for at McLean Farm. This race course needs to be approached with care and respect, and I was told beforehand that it is a race of survival, and then I went out there and tried to race it like a race of speed. So please treat that course with respect. And if you do not heed the warnings, prepare to end up in the emergency department. If you want the most diverse race conditions in the safest environment with a true grassroots vibe, plenty of delicious food at the food trucks and refreshments afterward, and the only race to be led out by an AMC pacer, I would recommend going to Magnolia Gravel Grinder. They really did put on a great event. If somebody was asking me, you have one chance to get me hooked on gravel, which race should I do? I would recommend Magnolia. And then finally, if you want a race that's going to pay respect to a great man and a great community, ride some roads that maybe you haven't been on before, and you don't want the most extreme conditions or extreme climbing in the series, I would recommend the Ride on Jeremy ride. It did fall later in the calendar this year, so it was a little bit colder, but I think even for next year, they're going to shuffle up the dates, but that is definitely not one to miss, and I would recommend that everybody ride that race as well. Now, if you want a race that includes road, gravel, mountain bike, and a chili festival, and you're in the mood for being really disappointed, go ahead and race the GPS 100, which unfortunately did not take place this year. It was scheduled to take place. I did speak with the race organizers, and they told me that a lack of commitment, a lack of registration led to the cancellation of the event. They are going to try to hold it again in 2024. I would ask you all to please register for that race. It is one of the first races that I ever did in the series. I did it a few years ago, and I was really looking forward to coming back. I had some special tactics in mind of which bike I was going to use because, again, it is another race where on the road, if you're dragging along a mountain bike, but then you've got your 28 millimeter slicks on the mountain bike section, you know, there is no right bike for the course, but I really felt like I knew where I was going to make up some ground. It does end in Chillicothe, and it coincides with the annual Chili Festival. I would definitely recommend that you guys show that race some love because it is a race worth doing, and I really missed it this year. All right, I'm sure at this point you guys are sick of hearing me flap my gums. I can feel my ears turning red, which could be the fireplace, it could be the footy jammers, or it could be the beer that I just drank. But my biggest takeaway from the series is my appreciation for the race organizers, because without that commitment, none of this would have happened. All of the positive vibes and feelings and all my interaction with the viewers out there, it just simply wouldn't have happened. My channel spiked in views and spiked in subscribers because of this series. And it's kind of pushing me and motivating me to actually bring you something special next year. If there is anything you'd like to see me do in 2024, just let me know, because of course I have my own personal goals, but making a great cycling channel is one of my goals as well. So feel free to drop something in the comments if you have an idea of something you'd like me to tackle. It was really nice this year to feel like I was part of a community, and as I said before, some of you reached out and told me that these videos were motivating, but it really goes both ways. It was just as motivating for me to make these videos for you. So heartfelt thank you to all the viewers, and really it doesn't go unappreciated. I do have some racing goals for 2024, and I would say unfortunately the Ohio Gravel Race Series does not really play a large factor, but I am not getting rid of gravel. I'm just going to set my sights elsewhere. I have a couple other races that I want to tackle that I think would be fun to bring you and give a good viewing experience. One of them I've done in the past, one I've not done and been terrified to do. And the one that I've done in the past, I'm going to just bring a whole different strategy to it. So I'll make sure to document that for you, video that for you, and make a good video. But thank you so much for all of the support this year. I can't believe that I've made something that you guys actually want to watch. So that really fills me with a lot of confidence and motivation to continue the channel and to try to give you guys some good content. So again, if you like what I'm doing, like and subscribe, show it to a cycling friend, leave it in the comments what you'd like to see me tackle this year. What a season. I couldn't be happier with 10th place. I don't know that, 9th place is that much better than 10th place, but I feel like 10th is a lot better than 11th, top 10, right? You know what I'm saying. Anyway, thank you guys so much. Time for me to do something a little bit more productive, and I'll see you all in the next one.